Welcome everyone, Average Father here, back at you with another review. Today, though, we're going down the archery path. So, wanted to do a kind of in-depth review of my Mathews Archery V3 compound bow here. I've had it for 4 years now, and I've used it for 3 hunting seasons. So, I think it's a good time to dive into it. I didn't want to do this in the past because I didn't have a lot of experience. This is my first bow, and I'll talk about it. So, just a little bit about me. I didn't grow up hunting at all. I went with a couple people a few times and got exposed to it. But what really got me into archery is I decided that I wanted to hunt. I got into rifle hunting and went out, and I had just an absolute fantastic time. And I was doing rifle elk hunt, which here in Oregon are a week long. And during that time, one of my buddies had a archery deer tag. I realized, wow, if you have a bow, you can archery elk hunt for a whole month. Typically, it's from the last couple days in August to the end of September. And I had such a blast in that 1 week rifle hunting that I just instantly, what can I do to do this for a month? So, the bow rack in Springfield, Oregon is fairly close to me. It's about an hour away, so I went up there and said, hey, I want to buy a bow. And looked at different options, looked at Hoyt, looked at Mathews, looked at PSE. I shot a Hoyt, I shot a Mathews, shot the PSE, looked through what they had, came home and got online, started looking up things, and really what my conclusion was on trying to pick, should I get a Hoyt, should I get a Mathews, or that PSE, was really just preference on what you like. At the end of the day, technology is so advanced now that whether you buy a Ford pickup or a Dodge pickup, a Chevy pickup, they're all just brand new pickups. They can pull whatever, they can tow whatever, and you can pack the beds full, they'll still operate. And bows are kind of really similar in that aspect, that they're fast, they're light, they're quiet, with all the new technology. So I went with what I thought looked the coolest, to be honest, and I love the look of the Mathews bow. It came in a 31-inch option at the time, or a 29-inch. I shot both of them, and from not shooting before, I had a really hard time with that 29-inch bow. It wasn't as stable. You had a lot of play up and down and left and right. And the 31, once I drew that back, felt really good. Went back to the bow rack and decided, I want to buy a brand new Mathews. So when you go up there, these are all hanging up. I'm not sure what the current models are. I think they went to a V3X, and I haven't looked at this last year's. So I can't speak to any differences on that. I'm just going to talk about this model, and this was in 2020. First off, when you get this bow, it's completely bare. You don't have a sight, you don't have a rest, you don't have anything on it at all. You need to first, fit it with everything. Looked at what sight I wanted. I knew I wanted a multi-pin, so I went with this Spot Hog grinder, and it is a 5-pin sight here. I don't know if you can see that very well. And the reason I went with this over a single pin is, from not having any experience archery hunting, I didn't want to get something at 20 yards and you're dialing it in for 20, and then maybe a different bowl comes through at 40, and then you got to do an adjustment. And I'm also incredibly forgetful. I can't tell you how many times I've walked out of my house and forgot my wallet, forgot my keys. I was gonna forget to set my single pin back to a reasonable range. So I went with this. You can't screw it up. You range your animal, and they're at 20 yards, 25, 47. You have it all right here. It's got a level on it. So simple is good for me. And then I pretty much went with whatever the bow rack recommended. So I did get the Mathews quiver on here, matched the bow really well, and then I let them pick the rest. And this one is a Hamskea, I think that's how you pronounce it, Hamskea primer. And then this is a Wharton, or excuse me, this is War Torn. And then for arrows, I'm shooting 125 grain. These are fixed broadheads on the Easton 5mm Axis arrows. Cool about the bow rack is they can pick your fletching for you. They can do the wraps, whatever color. What's nice is now that I have these, I can call them and they can just mail them right to my house. So that's super cool. They put on my bow this little strip of like velvet, and that is a game changer. If you don't have that there, you take an arrow out of your quiver and you come under your string. When you go into your rest, it's quiet. You barely hear it. If you take that arrow and you didn't have that on there, it would sound like that. So make sure you put a little piece of felt on there. So much more quiet. Last thing you want to be doing is getting ready to shoot your big old bull, get your arrow on there and have them run off. So be mindful of that and anywhere else your arrow is going to touch. So my first impressions on, once I got my whole bow set up just like this, they take you through and you do some shooting. I guess my first impression as soon as I shot was, wow, that is super quiet. The bows that I've been around in the past were probably about 10 to 15 years old, and they still shoot fast, they're accurate, but they make a lot of noise. Every time the string gets released, you just hear that whack. Not that this is super quiet, but comparatively it is dang near silent. It's like putting a suppressor on a firearm. So I was super impressed with that, but also the speed. At 60 yards with some of those older bows, you can see a little bit of arch with your arrow. This thing is straight all the way through and fast. I can't remember exactly what the feet per second. You can get online and look up Mathews. Next thing that I really liked was they have the adjustable poundage here. So you can just use an Allen wrench and adjust this. I think for these limbs, the max on this one's 70, and I'm not sure what the lower limit is. I think, I'd guess somewhere around 55, 65, 60, somewhere in that ballpark. But not shooting a bow before, not practicing using those muscles, it's really hard to just shoot at 70 pounds right off the bat, or 75 pounds. I think this one maxes out at 70. The last time I went and had it checked, I think they said the poundage was like 69.8 or something, which is plenty. It's plenty. There's people out there like Cameron Haynes who shoot a 90-pound bow and they can punch an arrow through an oak tree. I think good shot placement doesn't matter if you're shooting a 50-pound bow or 75-pound bow, 85-pound. Shoot what's right for you. So that's all I'm going to say about that. I didn't know how to treat a bow. I was so afraid of breaking this thing. You look at it and there's all these different little strings, there's these different little wheels, and you have your cams up here and your limbs, and I was afraid to really get my hands on it. And so that would be one, first thing of advice is like, these are not as delicate as you would think. You can drop them. You can drag them through brush and mud and rain, and it's not ideal. You drop your bow, you want to go shoot it and make sure that you didn't jack your sight up. But really, that's about it. The next thing I'm talking about is my sight. When I went up there, what they have you do when you get these bows and you get them tuned up is you'll practice shooting an arrow through paper first, and they'll cut your arrows. They get your draw length, and then they'll cut your arrows. They get all this squared away. They get your peep sight tied in, and you'll go up to paper and draw back, and they teach you how to shoot, how to hold the bow. It's great. Highly recommend the bow rack. It's the best place around in the Pacific Northwest. You've probably heard people talk about it. Joe Rogan's podcast, Cameron Haynes. Cameron Haynes is doing a lift, run, shoot. It's really popularized bow hunting. It's great. Go to the bow rack. They'll get you hooked up. They teach you everything from holding the bow, how to have your hand placement, that you don't want to just grab it, that you want to turn your hand to the side a little bit, use your, maybe your 2 fingers, maybe you leave them open, whatever's comfortable for you. They'll have you draw and shoot through paper. And what they're looking for is to see if your arrows turn sideways at all. And they'll adjust your bow to make sure that the arrow's coming out exactly straight, that your rest is dropping, and they'll get that tuned up. So once that's good, then you'll go to the range. And on these fixed pins here, typically people's top pin is a 20-yarder. So they have these macro adjustments in these sights, and then they have micro adjustments. So you'll start with the macro to get that 20-yard pin in. You go up, you'll put your 20-yard pin right on your target, you'll draw and shoot, 2 or 3 arrows, and you'll see height-wise where you're at. So you can adjust your up and down. You'll see if you're left or right, and you can get on YouTube and search a ton of different videos on how to do that. But I just want to talk about my experience here. And so they helped me get that 20-yard pin dialed, and then at the time there was like 40-yard lane, but it was packed, it was full. I got my bow in January. I thought it would be okay, not too close to hunting season, but this is right when COVID happened, nobody was working, so I guess it was right before, but it was a weird period. Pretty much, December of 19 to March of 20. It was a really, really odd time, and then just got worse. So I didn't shoot at 40. I got this tuned up to 20. I think, one of my initial kind of frustrations with the bow rack, and this is not a dig on them at all, they just got so popular so fast that there was probably 15 people in there buying bows all at the same time, and so they were a little overwhelmed and trying to do things a little fast, and they forgot to tighten my rest. So I said, hey, I can go home, I can go out to the range bag and get my 30, 40, 50, and 60-yard pin dialed. You can adjust the pins themselves on those, left, right, up, and down. I would encourage you, when you look up how to do that, to use the exact right-sized Allen wrench. Make sure it's standard or metric, whatever, get it precise, because those screws are so tiny you don't want to strip them out. But I go back home, I get my 20, and all of a sudden it's jumping all over the place. And I probably spent 2 hours trying to screw with my sight, and I was just chasing stuff. So I was like, maybe I'm just tired, I need to take a break. The next day I went out, tried shooting again, same thing, chasing all over the place. And I've shot firearms enough to know that my aiming is pretty decent. I might not have been the best at shooting a bow, and I'm still not. I'm just really the average guy. But something wasn't right, so I started messing around, and sure enough, I noticed my rest is loose, is moving side to side. So I went back up to the bow rack, and like I said, it's a little over an hour, so it was kind of frustrating. Go in there and say, hey, just bought this bow last weekend, my rest is loose, can we get that fixed? And they were really, at least my impression, they were embarrassed and they wanted to get taken care of. That's what they did. They got that tuned up, they went with me, they shot, they got my 20 side back in, we got my 40-yard pin, 30-yard pin all squared away. So when I went back home, I just had to get my 50 and 60-yard pin dialed. And after that, I've had no problems with this bow functionally. As far as like performance, probably, I start shooting the last, the first couple of hunting seasons, I'd start shooting in February, March, do some bow shoots, and then I take a little break in April, May, do some like spring bear hunting, and then in the summertime, usually June, start shooting, and then in July, really shooting every day, August every day, and then the hunting season opens up in August. So As far as shooting, I've had no performance problems whatsoever. Can shoot right up to 60 yards. This thing's fast, quiet, still just like the day I bought it. And over the last 3 years, I've talked about a little bit. You can drop these things, you can drag them through brush, you can do all those things. One thing I did notice with this is having the 31-inch model instead of the 29-inch model. It's a little bit more cumbersome to move through the brush, but it's not that big of a deal. It's just a couple inches. You got to work with what you got. So if you have a 31-inch bow, you better crouch down there and try to conceal it when you're moving through stuff, so limbs and stuff don't get hung up on your sight. All right, so I just want to go over a couple pros and cons. So the pros of this bow, we've talked about a bunch. If you buy a really nice bow, you don't have to do a ton of maintenance on it. It's fast, it's quiet, it's light, easy to maneuver. It does take some time to get used to how to grab these things, how to hold them, where to hold them. Most of the time, you're carrying by your string, carrying by your grip. You can find a way to make this comfortable for you. You can wear it up on top of your pack. Usually it'll sit, but some people have a sling. Here in Oregon, it's so dense and things happen so quick. I try to have this thing pretty accessible at all times. Some cons are up front, costs a lot of money. If you don't, the next big con is I'm really fortunate to have the bow rack an hour away. If they weren't, I would have no idea where to take my bow. There's some, I'm not going to name any of them, but there's some stores around that sell archery equipment, and even some of the smaller like pro shops, I don't trust them to work on my $2,000 bow. So that is a huge con. You need to find somewhere that can work on your bow, that's accessible. Like I said, you can drop your bow. It's not going to just shatter in a million pieces, hopefully. But if you do drop it, you need to go get it looked at. You need to make sure the timing's still right and that you need to shoot it. Or, if you need it restrung, something breaks on it, your peep gets all jacked up right in the middle of the season. You can't afford to put your bow in a mailbox and or the post office, and have it shipped off somewhere for 6 to 8 weeks to get it back. That would be a huge con. So that would be something to think about with bow. And then just to conclude here, I kind of ranted and raved about this thing in a bunch of different aspects, but I would recommend this bow to anybody that is interested in getting started bow hunting. It's a really, really forgiving. I haven't had any problems. My forearm's great. I've never whacked myself in the arm, and I'm not sure if that's just user error. You're gonna have some little minor things. I had this wrist strap. I had a different one that was made of leather, and it was a little thin, and after a while it just started to wear, so I upgraded to this like rope model that has a little bit thicker durability, and that's about it. I'll do one last video here after I wrap up, where I just kind of show you the bow itself, just looking at the cams and stuff closely. It's all in really good shape. I need to clean this thing. It's got some little bit of scratches on it, just from different deals, but overall it's in really, really good shape. I mean, I have took this places that you have to be to believe it, or you have to see to believe it, I should say. So highly recommend this bow to anybody looking into getting into archery, anybody that's got maybe a cheaper bow and you want to trade yours in and upgrade to something nice. Get yourself a Mathews, or get yourself a Hoyt, but I am probably a lifelong Mathews fan at this point. Hoyt or PSE or somebody would have to do something pretty spectacular to get me to switch over, but to each their own. If you want to go drive a Dodge or a Ford or a Chevy, choose what fits you the best. And yeah, I appreciate watching this video. leave some comments with questions down below. You know, there's a ton of stuff that I'm not covering. I've had a lot of experience with this bow. Be happy to answer any questions. If you can, like the video, subscribe to the channel. Helps me do content like this. And let me know if you have any experiences with a Mathews bow, or specifically the V3, or some of the newer models like the V3X or whatever they came out with this year. We'll go from there. You know, I've had this in the rain, I've had it in the snow. I have dropped it. I went back up to the bow rack and had them look at my timing and everything, and it's all been fine every time. I would say it was last year, about January, I went up there and just had them do a once over again, and my peep sight was starting to turn, so they fixed that. And then my D-loop here was also kind of turning, so my string, you know, after you shoot over and over and over again, after a while that string starts to get stretched out, and that's what was happening. Is it was just a little looser of a string, so just had a little twist to it. They got that squared away, and then I call it like serving here, serving string, right where your arrow attaches to your bowstring. After you clip in an arrow over and over and over again, you can kind of get some wear there. So what they'll do is, you know, take this D-loop off and they'll wrap new string around here, call it like a reserve, and or some people call it like a resurface. But what that allows you to do is get more life out of your string. You know, this one needs waxed already. It's kind of been sitting in my garage for a little bit, but you know, you wax up your string often, keep dirt and rain and moisture from tearing it up, but you can get a lot more life out of there. I was happy with that. I haven't had to have this stringed yet, so I don't know how much it costs, but I think it's, you know, fairly reasonable. And I kind of skipped over this in the beginning, and I want to go back to it, but the cost of a brand new bow, it's not cheap whatsoever. I don't think anything about archery hunting is cheap. If financially you love hunting, but you are limited on funds, I would kind of steer you away from archery hunting and, you know, rifle hunt. It's cheaper. Buy a rifle, buy some ammunition, you're good to go. Save up your money and maybe turn towards archery later down the road. But just straight up front, this bow fully outfitted was about $2,000, and then arrows, you know, a dozen arrows to have them done is $150, and you know, you break arrows all the time, lose them. So be mindful of that if you're going to pursue archery hunting. It's probably even more now. But maybe not. Maybe there's been such a demand that maybe some of the prices have stayed about the same with inflation. I don't know. But you can go out and you can buy a $400 bow, you can buy a $500 bow, a $700 bow. You don't need a brand new $2,000 bow to get started. And I guess I should clarify, the bow itself was about $1,100, but to get it outfitted came out to $2,000. You don't need that much money invested in a bow to go out there and kill a really nice trophy animal. Absolutely do not need to. But I heard this quote once of, you know, I'm not rich enough to buy it twice, and I think that can't be more accurate. I'm not rich enough to buy it twice, so I saved up my money for, you know, a year and then pursued buying a bow. And I, you know, haven't had to do anything with it since. If you buy a cheaper bow, you can expect your maintenance to be more frequent. So really, I think it's a trade-off long term, but that upfront money sucks. So be mindful of that. Personally, my favorite thing about this bow is how much power it has, even at far ranges. You know, these 125 grain broadheads on these arrows, with the speed of this bow, just packs a punch. It was year before last, I had a buck deer at, I think it was 52 yards, and I punched this thing right into the cavity, chest cavity, hit both lungs and the heart, and this thing took 2 bounces and died in like 4 seconds. It was one of the most ethically clean, fast kills that I've ever seen, and I was so impressed with this thing. Let me do a close-up. Like I said, like, subscribe, comment, do all those fun things. We'll catch you next time. Average Father, out.